Thank you so much for joining us for part of the Office of Inclusion summer webinar series focused on emerging sports for women. We're very excited to have you here today to talk about Stunt, which is the most recent addition to the NCAA Emerging Sports for Women webinar. We have some great experts from the sport and from different NCAA campuses that are going to talk to you about the advantages of considering adding this program. We hope you find it helpful. As we get ready to dive into this webinar, as an FYI, it is being recorded. So if you can't stay on for the full time, or if you have colleagues that weren't able to join today, we will be sharing out the recording for this webinar and for all other emerging sport webinars in the coming weeks so that you can view that at another time as well. My name is Gretchen Myron. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a director of inclusion here at the NCAA. I'm also joined by my colleague, Dr. Ashleisha Lakonde. I'll let her introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Ash. I serve as the Assistant Director of Inclusion at the NCAA, and I serve at the primary of the Women and Gender Equity core area along with Gretchen. Just a quick housekeeping item. Super excited for all of you to join us today. Just want to let you know we do have a chat feature where you can pose your questions, and we will answer those at the end of the webinar. And so please use that throughout the webinar as you follow along with us. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ash. So before we get into some specifics about the sport of stunt itself, we wanted to share a little bit more background related to the program. So if you're not familiar with it, the NCAA Emerging Sports for Women program was created in the early 1990s based on a recommendation from the NCAA Gender Equity Task Force. The main goal of the program is to help create more participation opportunities for women in athletics at the collegiate level. Since its inception in the early 1990s, there have been 5 different sports that have moved from that emerging sport status to championship status. Some of them, as you'll see here on the slide, have become some of our biggest women's championships, including things like rowing, beach volleyball, which was the most recent one to transition. And then we're hoping that we move from 5 to 6 actually this year when we have women's wrestling make that transition as well. The Emerging Sports for Women program is overseen by the NCAA Committee on Women's Athletics. That is an association-wide committee, meaning that there are representatives from all 3 divisions that help serve on that committee. They receive biannual updates from each of the 6 emerging sports every year and also provide recommendations and feedback to the sports. Their job really as the CWA is to help make recommendations to the divisions about adding or removing sports. It really is a great program in the sense that it still has to go through that typical NCAA governance and legislative process to get membership buy-in and input as different sports are added throughout, which has been super helpful with so many different opportunities that have been added in recent years. In addition to stunt, which you'll hear more about today, there are 5 other current emerging sports. Those are acrobatics and tumbling, equestrian, rugby, triathlon, and women's wrestling. So with that, we will turn it over to the experts on stunt itself. I'm pleased to welcome Lori Harris, who is the Executive Director of USA Cheer. Lori's going to talk more about stunt and all the great ins and outs, and then we'll also invite some administrators from campus to share more perspectives of their experience sponsoring stunt at the varsity level. Lori?
Yes, thank you. We're excited to be here, and thank you guys for hosting this webinar, and thank you for attending in and being interested in learning about what stunt is. We're excited to be the newest emerging sport for women with the NCAA, and if you're not totally familiar with what stunt is, let's see, we can go to probably the first slide there. Stunt was created nearly 15 years ago as the sport version of cheer. We have nearly 4 million cheerleaders participating in multiple cheerleading disciplines in the United States. It's one of the most popular youth activities. And with that, it has a format attracting girls of all shapes and all sizes from all socioeconomic backgrounds. And it makes stunt very diverse, inclusive, and really, to be honest, for you guys as institutions, easy to recruit for. And so we've been having stunt is brand new about 15 years, and we're excited about sharing it with you. We have been working towards this championship sports status. And so here's a snapshot of 2023 where we were for each of the divisions. And I'm excited to share coming off of 2024, we've had a lot of growth, a really great successful season. We had 4 Division I programs, 17 Division II, and 11 D3 all varsity NCAA programs this last season, 32 with 19 different conferences. We had about 1,200 college athletes play this last spring for Stunt. We had over 386 games that had been scheduled for Stunt. And one of our highlights is we had 2 athletic conference championships. So the Great Midwest Athletic Conference and the Lone Star Conference. So they run their own Stunt championships for their conference. And that's one of our areas of focus as we are growing. One of the other exciting things is already looking to 2025 as you guys are getting ready to get back to school and focusing on fall sports. But for the spring, we already have, in addition to our 32 varsity programs this last year, have 14 more teams that are committed and will be playing this spring. So our Division I's going from 4 to 7, Division II, 17 to 24 teams, and Division III, 11 to 15. So it'll be 46 varsity NCAA teams. In addition, we have 16 club programs that will be playing this spring, which predominantly is in the Division I club area. And we have over 10 NAIA teams. So close to in the basically 65 to 70 teams across all types that will be playing this spring. And we already have some teams on the horizon for 2026. Which is really exciting. So as we mentioned, we're very attractive to girls from all backgrounds, shapes, and sizes. In addition, Stunt has been just really great for Title IX in the sense of also our coaches are predominantly female, over 90%, and our officials as well. So it's a great opportunity for athletes, coaches, and officials to have an opportunity to do something with the sport that they love. So that's been great there. You can go to the next slide. We're talking about rosters. It's a large roster sport. It's a team sport. So it has a minimum of 16 athletes. On average is 27. So most of our teams, if we took all of our teams and just averaged them, we have about 27. Some rosters, though, are 40 plus. What our largest roster right now is 59. So there's limitless. It depends on what works for your institution, but our average is 27 to 30. Most teams will get to their 30 plus roster or that 27 plus by year 3 of having a program. So it's been really great to see the teams progress and have some nice roster sizes. Our recruiting basis is high school and club Stunt. We also it's fairly easy to fill our rosters because we have athletes at the grassroots level. We have Stunt is being played around the country, the high school and the club level. So we have over 10 states playing at the high school level. In addition, we have club, which has popped up everywhere, which is ages 5 to 18. So we're currently operating 8U, 11U, 14U, and 18U. Specifically for Stunt. So there's this huge pipeline of Stunt athletes, but in addition, you have the millions of cheerleaders along with other athletes that have similar skill sets of other sports, whether that's gymnastics, diving, weightlifting, cheerleading, kind of in any of those avenues has been a great recruiting place for the pipeline there. Our focus area of growth is continuing our expansion as we work towards championship sports status and D1, D2, and D3, and really working on athletic conferences with existing Stunt programs. So we're really kind of working within our conferences that have Stunt and saying, what are some other teams, some other schools in your conference that might consider adding a new program? Strategic geographical collegiate expansion is also a main focus. So that way it helps with the ease of game scheduling and your travel budgets, which we'll talk about in a second. So that has been something that has really helped, is really trying to kind of coordinate with our conferences or key states. And of course, we're also focusing on growth at the high school, junior high, and club level, which continues to aid in having more officials, having some coaching experience, and having some athletes to recruit from. And then the next slide. If you're not familiar with the competition format, it is a sport with skills derived from cheer. So we've basically taken the skills from cheer, put that into a head-to-head four-quarter game format between two teams at the same time. So you can see this picture here. The athletes are compulsory routines that they do head-to-head, and there is scored immediately on which team has the least number of deductions. They get the point. They kind of move on from there. So it's a very fast-paced game. And we do have some video that we can share with you if you're interested in seeing some live versions of it. We do offer the games itself are 45 minutes to 1 hour long with a spring season of February 1st to early April. So our games can be scheduled as a single game, but most of our games are tri-meets, or most common is we have tournaments where teams can play 3 or 4 games over a weekend, similar to volleyball schedules. So that is generally how we have been able to kind of grow and have keep our costs down as far as travel, but also be able to get a lot of play in. We are currently running the postseason championships for all divisions, including NAIA and clubs. So we're doing 5 different championships. This last year, we had 3 different weekends where we housed these events. This coming spring, we're actually going to run all 5 divisions with the NCAA, the NAIA, and club over in April, 424 to 427 in Nashville, Tennessee. So we are looking forward to running all of that simultaneously over kind of a 4-day period there. When we're talking about the facilities, one of the nice things about Stunt is you have what you need to start Stunt. We utilize existing facilities such as your gym, rec centers, ballrooms, field houses. Your gyms would be used with like your existing bleachers, your scoreboards, and that's to host a game. But for practice, they need 4 mats, so it's the half of the floor. And we have a lot of our teams that can now, as long as you have high ceilings, there's a lot of other practice space which can be used for them to be able to practice in other practice type facilities. So it's very user-friendly in that sense for being on campus and not needing to create brand new facility or take up really, really prime real estate there in your main gym all of the time, only really for those games, which is great. And then going over to the budget, because of that, Stunt is low cost. You can go to the next slide. It's low cost to implement and to maintain it. So when you're getting started, you really your facilities are there. All of that is in place. The equipment is needed is a foam carpeted mats. And you can start as low as 4 mats for practice, or if you wanted to you're going to host a game and you want to get all of them, that would be 13 mats. And you're talking it's approximately about $10,000 for your initial startup, but the mats do last 10 plus years. So it's a minimal investment for a long, long period of time. The uniforms are similar to volleyball. So sport jersey, shorts, and shoes, so very low cost as far as uniforms. And then your travel, as I mentioned before, most teams are traveling 2 to 3 away tournaments on average, with a focus of the geographical and division play, and maybe hosting 1 or 2 times at home. That can get you your full season, get more of the games than even is needed, and again, kind of keeps that cost down, because it is a larger roster in your travel expenses. Your salary is similar to other sports on campus. So women's soccer, volleyball, basketball, your salary is going to be in that budget range of similar sports. And then kind of wrapping up on the overview, and then is the coaching, education, and pipeline. So we are with you every step of the way as you look to onboard Stunt. We'll work with you to hire a coach, get them plugged into our new coach mentoring program. I have 2 colleagues on here, Carrie and Amy, which are available for any questions as well. And they're our expansion experts. They're working east and west and really helping to work with ADs, work with coaches, and getting them plugged in and have all the necessary training that they need to be successful. We also connect them with our College Stunt Coaches Association. So there is a separate College Stunt Association for coaches, and they meet monthly. They're doing education items. They help each other with recruiting. And they also do postseason, basically season recognition. So that's been great. We will help you support with implementation, coach searches, onboarding, anything of that nature. We can move as quickly or slowly as you need to. We've helped programs get started in 3 months. And then on average, you're talking normally 9 to 12 months, but sometimes it might be 18 months. So kind of whatever works for your institution and what works for your administration, we have the resources to help basically slow roll it or speed it up if need be. So in summary, kind of like the high level overview of stunt is, it's a low cost, it's easy to recruit sport, and girls love to play it. It's very fun to play. The coaches love coaching it, and the fans love to watch it. So what we've seen is stunt brings a lot of positive energy to your campuses, has a really great team culture, and so we thank you for joining in and considering Stunt on your campus. I think it'd be a great add to most institutions.
Thank you, Lori. We have two incredible administrators who actually sponsor Stunt on their campus. So I'm going to invite them to join us and quickly introduce themselves and have a couple of questions for them.
My name is Sandra Bell. I am the Executive Associate Athletic Director at the University of Kentucky. We have had Stunt for 3 years now and have had an amazing experience with that. We added it in 2021 as our 23rd varsity sport. And it has all the benefits of all of our other varsity sports. We have about 6 years ago, we decided we needed to add a women's sport. And we have at Kentucky, we have the state-of-the-art survey that we send out annually to our female students. And we had not had a spike of interest and ability in a sport for a very long time. So we started taking a really hard look at the emerging sports. And as soon as we added Stunt to that survey, we got a huge number of young women who were currently on our campus who had both the interest and ability to participate in this sport. So that was why we made the decision and received permission from our AD and our president to add Stunt as our 23rd sport. We didn't want to just add a sport for the sake of adding a sport. We wanted to add something where the young women who were involved in that sport would have a great student athlete experience. And in order for that to happen, you have to try to pick a sport that will not only fit your campus, but also fit your community. So we have noticed over the last 3 years, the crowds that come for our Stunt games has increased every year. We hosted the Division I National Championships this past spring, and the gym was packed. It was standing room only to watch that championship. And so it really helps the young women who are involved in the sport if there's a great deal of interest from your community. So that was certainly part of the decision for us to add that. As Louis mentioned, it's a very exciting sport to play and watch. Our fans there's something about being able to see both teams on the floor at the same time, doing the same routine, that really gets the crowd involved. The routines are also done to music, so it's fun to watch. When the routine is over, half of the gym is very convinced that one team won, and the other half is very convinced the other team won. So they get to boo the officials and the judges, and which all fans enjoy. So it has been a really, really exciting sport for us. From an administrative standpoint, I think what we have enjoyed so much, I have been in senior athletic administration for 35 years. But I don't think I've done anything that has been as much fun as starting a brand new sport and offering it to a group of young women who've never had an opportunity before. So within the sport of Stunt, you have some flexibility as to how you want to build your rosters. So we compete against teams who use their varsity cheerleaders as part of their Stunt team, and that's permissible to do. We choose not to do that. We have only co-ed cheer at Kentucky, and they are extremely busy and have a lot of scholarship money already that goes to them. So we felt like it was very important to offer this opportunity to a brand new group of young women. And that has been really positive for us because that group of young women has been very grateful to have that opportunity. The differences between like cheer and stunt is that in the sport of cheer, if a young woman makes the cheer team, then they need to be able to do everything that cheerleaders do. They need to be able to tumble, they need to be able to build pyramids, stunts, do all of that. In the sport of stunt, we can have specialists on our team. The quarters are divided by skills. So in the third quarter is just tumblings and jumps. So we can have a young woman who's very skilled in that area, but is not as skilled in pyramids or stunts, which are the first two quarters, who can be a really, really valuable member of our team. Louis also mentioned that the teams are very diverse in height, weight, strength, body type. Um, with us having just co-ed cheer, a young woman who was excellent at these skills, but suddenly was 6 feet tall, didn't have an option to represent the University of Kentucky with their skills. Now they do in the sport of stunt, and they take a great deal of pride in being able to do that. She mentioned that the average roster size is 27. We started with 35 at Kentucky our first year. Most of them were young women who'd been on the club team because we had not had a chance to recruit yet. This year we have 62 who are returning um, to our team. And the survey that I mentioned to you earlier, if a young woman has interest and ability in a sport that we currently offer, we guarantee them a tryout. Our coach is on this call, so he'll be interested to know we have about 30 young women we need to try out for this team as well. But the standard for participation has become very high, and so we try to keep our number right around 60 to 65. Stunt competitions are very much like out of conference softball, where several teams come to one site and you play each other. So in stunt, you have 16 dates of competition. So you can come to one place and play for 2 or 3 days and get several of those taken care of. You can play most of the teams that are within your conference. So it's very convenient that to get in 16 dates of competition, you don't have to travel to 16 different places. So it makes travel much more economical for your institution, the way stunt games are structured. And speaking of cost, our budget for our stunt team last year was approximately half the budget of our women's soccer team. Our women's soccer team gives us 30 participation opportunities. And as I said, stunt is giving us 60 participation opportunities. So stunt does count for Title IX, and it's a sport that is a great value for you when it comes to Title IX, because for a very reasonable budget that gives these young women every benefit every other varsity athlete has, but you can do it in a way that the budget is much less expensive than it is for some of our other sports. And that is very helpful to a lot of institutions. One thing that made it very palatable to us is that we did not have to build a new competition facility to add stunt. If you've got mats, you can go into any arena or gym and have competition and practice. So not having to build a new facility was an important consideration for us. We currently have a head coach and 2 assistant coaches. The NCAA actually allows a head coach, and now in the last year, we can add a third assistant, which we will be doing in the next year or so. And our coaches go out recruiting to high school stunt games, and they go to the stunt state championships. Several states have a high school state championship, and our coaches go there in order to find the best stunt athletes in the country and bring them back to Kentucky. So for us, the decision to add stunt was just really, really easy for us because we had a survey that already indicated to us that by far it was the sport that young women were telling us they wanted to compete in, rather than us trying to talk young women into trying out for a particular sport that they had not planned to compete in when they came to college. What we found was these young women were knocking our door down, trying to get us to start a stunt team. And now we have large numbers of them who are actually competing on that team. So the interest was one thing. The fact that our community is very excited about supporting this team, which gives the young women a great experience while they're here, and the affordability and the Title IX benefits that you get from this sport, to me is kind of a no-brainer. If you're looking for a new sport at your institution for women, these young women are great students. They are very grateful for the opportunity, so they're very easy to work with. And we couldn't be more pleased at UK with the addition that we've made. And I'll turn it over to Janet.
Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Walbert. I am the Director of Athletics here at Concordia University, Chicago. We are a small Division III institution just on the west side of the city. And Sandra took a lot of things that I would agree with, with the opportunities for women and, very easy to add without having to add any facilities or anything along those lines. Our story is a little bit different. As I mentioned, we're a small Division III school. And so we, as most Division III schools, are looking for ways to increase enrollment at our institution. So we approached it from that aspect of what could we be using to drive more enrollment and gather more women onto our campus that'd be interested in athletics. We had just added men's volleyball. So we were also in 2019. So we were also looking for a way to offset that as far as opportunities we offered. So in the fall of 2020, which in the middle of COVID, which ironically, we were given the opportunity by our administration to look into adding the sport. And we hired our first coach with our first recruitment class starting on campus fall 21. At the time, it was not yet an emerging sport, so we only had 14 young ladies that first year. Our roster going into our fourth year this year is going to be currently at 22, so we're just a little bit under that average roster of 27. We also, budget-wise, had to be very considerable again, and so what we actually did is we purchased half the mats needed. So we purchased those there's 13 needed, so we purchased 6 in our first fiscal year when we hired our coach. And then we purchased the other 7 the second fiscal year. So we split that cost up. One thing about the mats that I would say to keep in consideration, make sure you have storage room for those in the facility, because that was something we got to be creative with in trying to find a storage place for those mats. So that's one thing we had to consider. The other thing that I would say is we already had a sideline cheer team on campus, and that was coached by a part-time coach. And this gave us an opportunity to get a full-time coach hired to work with those young women. And so that brought a little bit more respect factor to the team on campus, as well as we were able to increase the budget now that they're going to be, we knew this was hopefully emerging sport with NCAA. And so we are treating it already as an NCAA sport from the beginning to try to balance it with our other NCAA sports and provide the same opportunities and experience for these young women. I'm sorry, I'm glancing at my notes. What made it interesting for us is that we were the first school, whether high school or college in the state of Illinois, that added stunt. And so one thing that happened a lot for us was doing a lot of education in explaining to recruits what the opportunity was, as well as explaining around campus what it was, because it is very different than competition cheer and sideline cheer. And what makes it the difference is specifically that side-by-side competition of the different skill sets, which creates a much more exciting environment, as Sandra mentioned, because after a routine is performed, the crowd, in addition to the athletes, are just sitting there like with bated breath, waiting to see which side the referee is going to signal gets the point. And as Sandra said, half of them erupt in cheers and the other half start going, well, why has that happened? And so it makes it a very interesting and exciting game and to participate in. Our attendance at our stunt games is the same as our basketball games, as our football games. The attendance at our stunt games is probably one of our most well-attended events just because of the excitement that it captures. And it's 45 minutes to an hour. So it's about half the time of a length of a soccer game or a baseball game or football, basketball game. So when students, they just have a little bit of time and want to come, they can see the entire event instead of just half of it. Other considerations to keep in mind, which was a budget thing that we needed to really be cognizant of at the Division III level, is making sure with athletic training coverage that even though most people would think, well, that's not that, significant for coverage. That's something that we advocated a lot for, that I did specifically with working with our athletic training staff and making sure that we had coverage for our practices. And I also worked with our strength and conditioning coach to make sure that they were available to help with training with our stunt athletes. Because again, there's, bringing in a different type of program and also with limited resources, making sure we're budgeting and working those types of scheduling out. There's another thing that we've run into is there's been a lot of support and mentoring that's been needed for our new coach. Our first coach came from the stunt world where she competed in stunt. But there is a difference. She knew the sport, but it didn't have the experience recruiting. And so you have to do a lot of balance and mentoring with that, because in year one, they spend a lot of time in recruitment. And then in year two, it's trying to balance that coaching of the sport in addition to still maintaining that recruitment. And so, unfortunately, we've had a change in coaches for whatever reason. We're finding that same struggle with balancing the recruitment aspect with the coaching, because we're getting a lot of the coaches that become available for us tend to come from the high school level or from the club experience. And so balancing those two has been where we've had a lot of considerations and trying to, make sure we're mentoring and supporting our coaches in the best way we can in that way. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I think I went through most of my notes, but if questions come up, willing to answer. Again, Division III, we had a little bit more of a different experience than what Sandra experienced at Kentucky, but both have been great opportunities for women for sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Sandra, if you could also hop on for a second, if there are any lessons you learned sponsoring the sport on your campus, or any other items you would want the schools to consider as they sponsor that sport on their campus, this is a good time to share that.
I think what Janet brought up, she brought up about the athletic trainers. When we first added sport, because it does have a lot of participants, when we first added stunt at our institution, we had to make sure that we went to our academic department, our athletic training department, our strength and conditioning department, every one of those, and let them know that we were getting ready to add 16. We were getting ready to add 60 student athletes to their workload, and make sure that administratively we were ready to cover them because we wanted them to have absolutely every benefit that every other student has. And so we were able to do that. They figured all that out. Our team has a designated academic advisor that works just with them. They have their own strength coaches and they have their own trainers, but that took us a year or two to get that coverage exactly the way that we wanted it to be. That nutrition was covering stunt exactly the way they were every other sport. And so I had a lot of conversations with different people where my nutritionist would call and say, what do you want me to do with stunt? And I would say, what do you do with softball? And she would go, oh, and I was like, yes, exactly the same. But it is a little bit of a burden on those areas to add that many. So pre-planning for additional people to receive those benefits, I think, is very helpful.
Sorry, I would just echo that. And just, the biggest thing that we found, with lessons learned is, managing expectations and, there's a lot of comparison to, which program has priority or which are this and that type of stuff and which is important. And it's, we're trying to build a culture of every sport is just as important as everything else. And so it's just making sure that other departments throughout the campus understand that this, it's a different sport than what people are used to. And so there's a lot of teaching and explaining and educating that happens. And a lot of times it can be just come to a game and see what these young women do, because I played college basketball, but I'll also be the first one to say that as much as an athlete that I was in college, there's things that these young women do that I would never be able to do. And so it's also making sure that reinforcing the idea that these young ladies are just as much of an athlete as anyone else on your campus that you have in your athletic department.
Yes, and Dr. Ash, I think it's important too that sometimes those of us who have been in athletics for a very long time think we have a really good idea of what a sport is or what sports we should be offering. But I think we also need to step back and listen to the young people themselves as they tell us, this is what I would like to compete in. This is the team I would like to have. And through our survey, our young women at Kentucky spoke loud and clear that this is what we want to do. And so to be able to offer them not only an athletic opportunity, but to offer it in the sport that they wanted has been very gratifying. So I think we need to listen to them.
That's a great way to transition. I'm going to ask Gretchen to hop on so we can answer some questions. I know we have some questions in the Q&As, but this is your chance to ask us any questions, whether it is administrators or even Lori. So Gretchen, if you want to take on over.
Yeah, that was a perfect transition. I think that's one of the really exciting parts about the emerging sport program in general is that these are new opportunities for women. And not only are they coming to be able to compete on your campus, but they're also receiving all of those amazing benefits of a college education, development, and just becoming future leaders through sport. So it's really just a wonderful way that you can have some new faces and new exposure to that. We do have a couple of questions. The first one is a pretty quick and easy one. It's just clarifying the timing of when Stunt competes. So Lori, I know you talked about the spring being that primary time. Do you want to just go over that a little bit more of what that looks like?
Yeah, spring sport starting February 1st, and pretty much we wrap up the season early April, and then the championship being the end of April.
Great, thank you for that. Another question that we had, there was some talk or a little bit maybe more clarification that you all could provide about some of the different specialized positions that stunt athletes are able to participate in. So especially with those different quarters that focus on different styles, can you talk a little bit more about what those differences look like per quarter and how that might have different athletes that are able to have different opportunities to compete?
Yeah, this is getting a little bit more into the details of the game, and we're happy to have more one-on-one conversations about that if you're really, really interested. But the high level is there's 4 quarters in stunt. The first quarter is partner stunts, and then the second quarter is pyramids and tosses. Then you have a halftime, and then you go to third quarter, which is jumps and tumbling, and then quarter 4 takes quarter 1, 2, and 3 and puts it together into a routine. So one of the things we love about stunt, which was mentioned, Sandy mentioned it really well, is you are able to, just like any other sport, you have your specialty position. So if you're like a quarterback or you're a running back or you're a forward or you're, a certain position on a basketball team or a football team or a softball team, you're the pitcher or the umpire, all those different things that's what stunt is. So you can be, I'm a specialty tumbler. Like I tumble. And so I'm going to be in jumps and tumbling quarter 3. I may be assisting in maybe a partner stunt, a lower level, or maybe a pyramid, be a lower skill level in a pyramid section, but my specialty is going to be in quarter 3. So that's what allows you to have like a deeper roster and a deeper bench to be able to have people come in and out. And then you can recruit specific athletes. Like I really need somebody who's a really good partner stunner. And we do have our routines go from 1 to 8. So in each quarter, there's 4 rounds. So 4 routines will be played. of the 8. And it goes from 1 is the lower level skills up to 8 is the most difficult. So you can definitely, I see our coaches starting to recruit specific athletes that they're maybe like a 7 and 8 in their certain skills, but then also needing some other athletes that they're recruiting specifically for basing or specifically for a certain role on the team. And that's where then you can balance out, get a larger roster. You're not maxing out 1 or 2 athletes on everything. And so that's been, again, the different shapes and sizes, all the different things that it's attracting is you don't have to be necessarily great at everything, but you can now participate in your sport because you're really specializing in a particular skill set of stunt, and that's what makes it so neat. I'm kind of like thinking back on the Olympics, and it's like that really fun like thing about Steve on the specialty player of the gymnastic team, but it's like that's his role. And some of them are going to be your all around. They're going to be a Simone Biles. They're going to do it all. But some of them are going to be Steve, and they're going to be like they come in for that particular routine, and that's what makes stunt so special is you can kind of have something for all types of athletes.
I think that's a great analogy, Lori. I know we all enjoyed that. And yeah, I think it just helps shows the breadth of the different types of athletes that you're able to recruit. Sandy or Janet, anything additional from your experience with some of those different specialty areas?
What I was, oh, sorry, Sandra.
You'll go right ahead.
The one thing I was going to mention is what we've experienced even in our recruitment is recruiting athletes or young women who are athletes in high school, but they don't feel that they have the confidence or the skills necessary to compete in their particular sport in college. So for example, one of our bases, she played volleyball, basketball in high school, but those skills weren't where they needed to be for her to compete on that team. But she's a very strong young woman. And so she very easily transitioned over to stunt as a base, because she can't tumble. She's never tumbled in her life before, but now she's building up her confidence in that she's, and she's doing a phenomenal job as one of our bases. She's one of our bases that she's like has one on each arm and another one behind her. So, it's, you don't necessarily need to stay within the specific of what you think of a traditional stunt athlete may look like. It could also be somebody else who's done something completely different prior to coming to your campus.
And there is a position on the stunt team called a back spot who needs to be very tall because they load the flyer into the stunt or the pyramid, and they need to be able to see over that to see what's happening. And so those young women who mother took them to cheer when they were 3 years old and they trained for 10 years and suddenly they're 6 feet tall, they have a great opportunity in stunt. We need them desperately to make everything work. And so those young women are thrilled to be able to use their skills.
That's really helpful. I think it also just shows again, the variety of different body types, different skill sets that all can have a different role playing stunt, which is great. One of the next questions we have is one I'll actually take, which is just a little bit more on the process side of how things work and some of the next steps, from an NCAA side of things. Lori mentioned the great sports sponsorship numbers that continue to grow. We'll have more information on some of those numbers when we get the official sports sponsorship data back from our NCAA research department this fall. So this is always our shameless plug to make sure when you fill that out every year that you're doing so as accurately as possible, especially for those minimum contest and participants information. That's incredibly helpful for all of our emerging sports to keep tracking on their growth. As far as what it would look like to transition from an emerging sport to an NCAA championship, the legislation requires that at least 40 programs are meeting minimum contest and participant requirements in an applicable academic year before legislation can be introduced. So once 40 programs are confirmed meeting those minimums by that sports sponsorship data, that's really the first step in the process for CWA to then look at the sport and consider making a recommendation to the divisions to add the sport. It does have to go through that full legislative cycle with each division voting on it to be added as an NCAA championship sport. The budget also has to be approved for that. So we work closely with our colleagues in some different departments to help get information about these different sports to help project out what that could be. The first step, as many of you probably are aware, is that it would be at a national collegiate championship status, which means that all three divisions would be participating if they have a program and qualify for that. And then you don't get to some of those individual divisional outbreaks until you meet the legislative requirements in those specific divisions as well. But right now, what we're seeing with women's wrestling has been a helpful kind of guidepost for some of these other sports that we're seeing grow really, really quickly, which is great. It's typically about 2 years from the time that CWA makes a recommendation until the time that the first championship is held. So we are trying to work on expediting that as much as possible, having conversations earlier, because there's lots of really exciting sports that are growing really, really quickly right now, which is great to see. So hopefully that helped answer that question. Okay, let's see. We do have another one as well for you all. I know Janet and Sandy, you both talked about some of the different considerations and things to think about on your campus as it relates to Stunt and for those adding. Is there any success story in particular you'd want to share with the audience today about something that's been really great to see or that has certainly been encouraging with the addition of the sport that you think would be relevant to share?
Um, I think one of the really positive things for us has been the experience with the parents. Um, a lot of parents who've had their young women in cheer for a very long time, and their daughter has been on the sidelines at high school or middle school or wherever they were, cheering for the athletes. When they suddenly realize my daughter is the athlete, my daughter is the student athlete on the floor. My daughter is a Division I, a Division II, a Division III college athlete, and they are so excited about that prospect that, boy, they are in the stands watching every chance they get. I'm sure they went and watched them be on the sideline, and that was great. But to watch them be the one that everybody's yelling for out there on the floor is really a new experience for them. And it has been really, really exciting to watch. So that's been really positive.
Yeah, I would basically echo that as well with what Sandy just said. And another one that I would just say too, this happened a little bit more recently. Division I and Division II approved Stunt as an emerging sport prior to Division III approving it. And so when I called our coach at the NCAA convention this past January, and I said, we did it, Stunt is finally, approved as an NCAA emerging sport. She happened to be at practice and she put me on speakerphone, and the cheer from the girls was just so exciting because they have always, for the past few years, keep in mind, like our rising seniors now, we're freshmen and started this program. And for them to see the program go from just sponsored by USA Cheer to now also being sponsored by NCAA as an emerging sport, the progress that they've noticed from that has just been so exciting for them to see. We just missed going to the just missed going to the national tournament this past year. But, our first year competing, we were already going to nationals. And so it's just one of those things that the amount of recognition that they can earn. And it's been very positive to see because, they now have a banner hanging in the gym right next to our national track championship that we have. And so, as the national runner up. And so it's just one of those things that they're excited to see. And now with it being an NCAA emerging sport, it's just giving the opportunity for more recognition for what these young ladies do.
I think those are great examples. And they, again, just continue to highlight the importance of that student athlete experience, which I think you both talked to earlier too, about a consideration when adding the sport, which is so important. One other question we wanted to ask, Lori, I know you talked a little bit about coaching and the pipeline for that. And I think, Janet, you also talked on some of the mentorship opportunities there. Stunt has a large number of women coaches in particular. Is there anything additional you'd want to elaborate on about what you've seen in that pipeline as far as coaching goes, and some of the different objectives that you're hoping to continue pursuing?
Yeah, no, thanks for kind of adding that in. It has been interesting. I just was talking to our colleagues about it. I think one of the cool things is we also have a lot of our coaches in college have been former stunt athletes. So that is to see them now come as a collegiate athlete and then now be a stunt coach. As Janet mentioned, there's probably a little bit of a learning curve on some of them to learn how to recruit. they know how to be the athlete and know the sport. And so, but it's, it's a learning curve, and it's been, we have a lot of great ADs that will say, hey, I can teach them how to recruit, but I can't teach them how to do stunt. So, we'll work on that. And so seeing the high school athletes for stunt be now college athletes is been a real big cool thing. And then seeing the athletes become college coaches, but also a lot of our college athletes are now also coaching high school stunt teams. And so it's just growing the sport, and that's been really cool. We help promote it on our channels. We will help get the word out. And then again, just really work with administrators on, trying to find the best fit. It's not always perfect like any other sport coaching, but we have seen a pretty high success rate. And again, to see the amount of female coaches, we love all coaches, but it's great to see a lot of them being being female, more opportunities than I think in traditional sports. And also our officials. We didn't mention that a ton, but we have an officials association. We work through Arbiter. We schedule all the officials. It's a low cost option. It's not, it's very comparable to probably even a little bit less expensive than some of your other sports, but we work with all the administrations on scheduling that. And it's a separate officials association that we have basically seeded and kind of started. And so we just feel like we're just really trying to set up all the institutions to be successful.
Yeah, I will echo what Laurie said about bringing in former athletes. They make that transition very quickly to coach. We both of our assistants are former athletes, and they have such a voice in practice. And this is such a technique driven sport. It's not just, can you get that girl up in the air, but can you do that exactly the way it's supposed to be done? Because if you don't, you're going to have deductions. And so we've got these people who have just done it and know exactly how to do it. And if somebody's not doing it right, they just step in and say, no, move your hand over here or put it there. And then suddenly everything works. So having those former athletes in those coaching positions is really special in this sport.
Yeah, I already have one of my rising seniors because, again, first class going through, one of my rising seniors asking what opportunities are there for me to continue in the sport and going into coaching. And so, I've mentioned that stuff, and she's really pushing for me to hire her as our GA for next year. I got to find the money for that first, but she wants to get involved and stay in the sport because, she came in as a high school sideline cheer that she does, and she was not a competitive cheerleader. She didn't like that. She only liked the sideline. And now she has received accolades every year for her academic and athletic performance. And so, the pipeline keeps building, as Lori said, so there's the point.
Great. Thank you all. That's super helpful to share. And thanks, Lori, also for mentioning the officials, because I know that's always a challenge for all sports. So not only great to hear that there's you all, help with that coordination, but also that there's a growing pipeline of women officials too. We have one more question, and then I'll wrap up with a final one for you all. So another question that came in was just a clarification about one of the costs that was mentioned. Lori, can you talk a little bit more about the minimum number of mats? I think the number of 10,000 was on there. So can you just explain a little bit more about some of those differences in the mats and purchasing costs that are average for those?
Yeah, if you were to, costs are relative, depending upon how many mats. On average, we say a mat is, with shipping and everything, $1,000 a strip. So if you need 4 strips, you're talking about $4,000. If you're talking about all 13, you're, $10,000 to $13,000. So that figure was for like a full set. We use Easy Flex, and they do have, a couple month kind of out as far as ordering and shipping, but it's on average $1,000 a strip. Sometimes you get a discount for like buying more. So that's where the price can go lower if you buy like a full floor. But I just always estimate $1,000 a strip.
And if you have a cheerleading team on your campus, you probably already have mats. And
Yes.
there are times when we have moved from one facility to another and we have shared mats with our cheerleading team. So that's always a possibility as well.
Good. Thanks for that clarification. Well, we just have a few minutes left. I want to be respectful of folks' time, but we like to wrap up with kind of, if you could have one word or one phrase to describe what stunt looks like at the collegiate level, how would you describe that to leave with the folks that we have on the call today?
Why are you making me choose only one word?
Phrase, you have some options there. So
Well,
just your final your final message about how you feel about stunt.
I just think, it's exciting. It's an exciting opportunity for our young women and very positive. It's been a positive impact on our campus in terms of enrollment, involvement in our athletic department, and the positive experience these young women are having.
Right. I think with what we're experiencing right now in athletics a lot, where we're seeing a lot of people who are getting caught up in a lot of things other than just the pure joy of the game, which having been in this for a very long time, that's kind of what I remember this business being, is just the pure joy of the game. And with this stunt team, I have found that again. So if you're going to make me use one word, I would use joy. It's been good.
Well, and I would just say, I always just tell it's my summary little like 2 minute elevator pitch, but it's low cost, easy to recruit and manage. And what I kind of love to say is the girls love to play it. They love it. Coaches love to coach it, and fans love to watch it. So it brings positive energy to your campus and a great team culture. So it's kind of, in my opinion, one of the best sports you can add on your campus. And for all of those reasons, if you need Title IX, it meets that. If you just need enrollment, it meets that. Like, it kind of hits all the boxes, but more importantly, you have a ton of girls out there that just love playing it, and you just get a great team culture on your campus.
Great. Thank you all. It's evident to see how much you all enjoy it too. So we always appreciate that. Well, we are just right at the end of our time. We'll put some contact information up here. But again, thank you all for joining us today to talk more about stunt as an NCAA emerging sport for women. Thanks so much to Lori and her colleagues at USA Cheer. And thanks to Janet and Sandy for sharing your time and your expertise as well of sponsoring stunt on your campus. This webinar was recorded, and so we'll make sure that anyone attending today, and then we'll also make sure that a broader audience receives the recording. If you have other questions, though, I know Lori is happy to answer those, and certainly many of our other administrators are as well. So thank you so much again for joining. We hope this was helpful, and please let us know if we can help with anything else. Have a good rest of your day. Thank you.